Welcome to Theory Paranormal. This is Pax, your host, with fellow co-host Dalton. This podcast is going to be Season 2, episode/podcast number 9, and this is going to be about apparitions, the dangers of being an investigator of the paranormal, and lastly, disembodied voices. So, a little bit of a mixed trio there of subjects that we're going to cover in this podcast. So, as always, how have you been there, Dalton?
Well, man, just kicking up asphalt, trying to make $1. You know how it goes. How about yourself?
I'll staying busy with life. There's never a dull moment or a quiet day in my life. So, always keep my head on the swivel and go.
Yeah, sounds like a normal story for everybody.
Most definitely.
So, apparitions, dangers, and disembodied voices, huh?
Yep, a little bit of everything there.
We getting the emails on anybody?
As far as it goes, we did get a email from an individual that lived in Europe over in Germany, and they wanted to know if, as far as it goes, apparitions, if they are tied to a specific location that they're prevalently known to be found in or focused in, or if they can be anywhere.
What's your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because a lot of the fanfare when you watch TV shows or movies, they always portray them at the quintessential location of it being the old colonial home in circa America of the late 1700s, 1800s, or maybe a saloon in the Wild West, or maybe an old bed and breakfast somewhere in England in the UK, or depending on where you are in Asia, certain places and forests or different locations that have significant value, you might see a apparition. I think personally, the apparitions can be anywhere. But if you think about it logically, all of these major places that they show up were places of convenience that served a purpose for people. And unfortunately, usually more times than not, something traumatic happened and they passed away. Places of hotels, places of a public venue, like an event, a saloon, a forest, maybe a castle, for instance. They were all places in their day and age was just a common everyday location. But in the grand scheme of things, they're pivotal locations where people interacted and went on with their lives. But when you look at the totality of everything, you see it as a common theme all throughout the world. So, to circle back and answer the question, I believe apparitions can be anywhere, but I think for story's sake and people learning about them and passing along urban legends or haunted legends, as I like to say, I think more notably they'll be in locations that are concentrated with stories. Most people don't raise their hand and say, hey, Bob or Bill, how was your weekend? As they're in the office coming in Monday, and it's like, oh, everything was great. Hanged out with the family, saw the apparition in the house walking by, at 2 a.m, said, hey, what's up? High-fived. And then went on with our weekend. It doesn't happen like that. 9 times out of 10, when somebody sees an apparition, it's after the fact. It's going to be, I took a photo and I went through them months later, weeks later, days later. Oh, and I saw this image that wasn't there because I was by myself. Or I'm in the middle of doing something and I'm taking a video and I see a blur for some reason in a part of the video that has no reason to be there, or a shadow, even though it's bright outside. That doesn't add up. For somebody to see a apparition point blank in front of them, I think is a very, very, very rare occurrence. And I think it depends on how that person is physiologically speaking and metaphysically speaking on an energy level.
Think about it. Think about it now before you say that.
Just saying.
Think about it now before you say that.
But I'm also a glass half empty, half full type of person. I look at both sides. So that is my 2 cents on that. What about you there, Dalton? Do you think?
Well, like I said, think about what you were saying, because you forgot about Gettysburg. But anyway, I'll get into that in a moment. But first of all, I want to wave a hand, since we're talking about Europe and England. I want to wave a hand to Silver Vixen out in Britain. There is a new listener that got online with me and appreciates our podcast. So Silver Vixen, we want to say hello to you over in Great Britain. But let me just say this: apparitions. Now I agree with you on the point that apparitions are everywhere. I mean, they're just all over the place. There's no specific, to me, there's not a specific reason other than, we always said that, when people pass away, they wind up going back. As far as, let me say this, here's my opinion again, my theory.
Your theory, Theory Paranormal.
My theory, right? So my thing is, like most paranormal investigators and people in the paranormal world, they say that the reason places are haunted is because people go back to where they were the most happiest, whether they were unhappy in life, or they were, just, butt heads or evil or whatever the case may be. However they live their life is usually how they wind up when they pass. So regardless of the fact, like, we get a lot of investigations where, people say, hey, I'm being bothered by a spirit. We find out it's a past uncle or cousin that used to, torment that person when they were alive. So they're doing it when they're passed. I mean, it's kind of the catch-22 on that. So as far as apparitions go, I'm saying these spirits wind up going back to these places. To me, an apparition, when you see, which I was getting to, is we have a photo on Facebook. I believe it's on there. I'll have to double check, because I think I put it on there. But my mother went to a class reunion. Remember my mom and Dennis? They come to Casadegas with us.
Yep.
And did the investigation.
Yep,
and
I remember.
And right. So they weren't really believers until some things happened in their house, and then that's when they came to Casadega, and he kind of was like, yeah, I mean, how's the flashlight turning on and off? And as you ask questions, it's answering you. So he became sort of a believer, right? So shortly after that, she had her class reunion in St. Louis, Missouri, and they were in an old ballroom, like an old 1800s. This thing was around for a very long time. Now, if anybody knows Missouri.
Is that how you really say it, though?
Yes, that's how I say it, Missouri. Misery. You want to call it misery? Okay.
No, Missouri.
Missouri. So anyway, so if anybody knows, there's a lot of stuff that happened in that state during those times. I believe Jesse James' gang was up there. You had some Civil War stuff up. Ulysses S. Grant's tomb is there in Jefferson Barracks. His makeshift tomb. I don't know if it's his real. I think it's a makeshift. But anyway, so they were in this 1800s ballroom. It was an old ballroom, and my mom was sitting there with one of her old classmates, and he was trying to take a picture, and he said the flash wouldn't work. So he took like 3 or 4 photos, because he figured, okay, I'll just take a bunch, see which ones are the best, and not really like they needed the flash in there, but he just was wondering why it was on. Like, you had the flash on, but it wasn't working on the phone for some reason.
Right.
So he took these 4 or 5 photos or whatever, and right after that, I immediately, I didn't know that he had just took them, but she texted me with these pictures, and she was like, "OMG, would you look at this?" And at first, I'm looking, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's you and a friend." And then I look behind her, and there's a full colored apparition of a woman walking behind them. So the first So the guy standing in the back, you look at the photo, and so the first picture, the guy's got his arm in a certain position. Second, he's got his arm in another position. Third, he's got his arm in another position. So you can tell the photos are sequenced. So the first one, you didn't see it. Second one, you seen her coming behind them. And then the third one, you didn't see her, and his arm was in down position. But there's a chair sitting behind him. You can see where she's walking through the chair. So you could see that she was a blonde lady. You can even see the color of her skin sort of in the picture. And her face is elongated because that's some of the apparitions when they form like that. Their faces are a little disformed. What do you want to call it? Discombobulated or whatever.
Disfigured.
But disfigured, yes, thank you.
But
and
I like your version better.
You could discombobulated. So anyway, you could tell she has blonde hair. You can see the color in her face a little bit. She had a black 1800s gown on, like a ballroom dress. Now, the reason I say that is because if you look closely towards the bottom, the midsection, you can see where it poofs out in the back, like they used to wear I forget what they call them, the poof out their dresses. But she had long black gloves on. You see, like the one hand she had up, there's like a long black dressy glove, like they used to wear the elongated gloves that comes up to their elbow.
Mm-hmm.
Strictly 1800s. Or even early 1900s, maybe, because some of that stuff lasted up until, the early 1900s. So here's this full-blown colored apparition walking behind my mother and her friend while he's taking a photo. And I was like, oh, that is a good catch. That's an awesome catch right there. And I posted it. So to get back to apparitions, though, Gettysburg, I mentioned Gettysburg. You were talking about people, the way people see them. Well, in Gettysburg, there's been stories, and this. That's why I said, remember what you're saying, because that in Gettysburg, people walk down the sidewalk and an apparition will pass them. They think it's a real person. They're like, hey, what's up? And then they turn around because they're wondering why the person didn't answer. And as soon as they turn around, that figure's gone. Like it walked by them. Or you've had people catch colored apparitions of soldiers in the field coming out of the wood line. Could be a drummer boy, or it could be a dude walking out with a rifle in his hand. And sometimes they've said they've seen a whole battalion, like a whole set of troops out there, like they were marching in full colored. And you can tell if they're Union or Confederate. They either had blue or the gray uniforms. And so that Gettysburg is probably the best that I know of for colored apparitions, like full blown apparitions. And for people to walk down the sidewalks and actually see them and to think that they're a real person and actually they're not, I've always told you, like, we got to go to Gettysburg. Cause I want that experience. I want to see, like, if I'm walking down a sidewalk and a soldier's coming at me, or, cause up there they do play roles. So sometimes people wear those kind of clothes from that era. So you would kind of think, oh yeah, it's just a person dressed up. You're not really paying attention, but
role play
to me, yeah, role play. And to me, I would think like, hey, couldn't you like see through that person? Like if it's an apparition, wouldn't you tell that it's not a solid form, like a solid body, but hundreds and hundreds of accounts of people seeing full colored apparitions in Gettysburg. But I think it's just, that the spirit has been there long enough to be able to form enough energy. That takes a lot of energy, if you ask me, to do that, to be able to pretty much show yourself like you was, and not just be a white mist or, some kind of shadow looking figure. Because, I mean, you talk about shadow people, you talk about shadow figures. So you're talking apparitions. I think maybe apparitions and part of shadow people go to hand in hand, like, because some apparitions are dark. They're dark enough that it looks like a shadow person. In fact, I think you sent me something I posted on our Facebook page that shows an object, right? Was it the
correct? We had somebody pass to us, shared a apparition that they captured. And after reviewing it, that's when I said, hey, there's really something here. There's a before photo, a during, and an after where you can see the transition of it moving and it changing shape. And so then that's when I shared it with you. And we went from there. It's at a location in Florida. And the thing that really captured and struck me about this image is it's one thing if it's just a blurred out image and that's all you have is one photo. But this particular image, there's two photos of it. And you can see the transitional point of the apparition looking out from the steps away from the house, looking, towards the individual that took the photo. And then you can see in another photo, the apparition literally change direction of their facing and move as they're walking down the wooden front porch towards the side of the home. So that right there in itself debunked itself of it not being fake because you have two different points of views. The other thing is there's the value of the translucence of it. You have the shape of it. It's not necessarily one particular color, which really I found to me that struck it very interesting. A lot of apparitions that you may see, if anybody is lucky enough to see them, either by eye or capturing in video or photo, they're going to be blurry. They're not going to have a lot of features. There's going to be outlines. There's going to be shapes of a figure potentially, or of clothing or different things, but it's not going to be crystal sharp and clean like it's a 4K photo. And
yeah, well, the one that my mother caught, you can clearly see that's a woman.
Right.
I mean, it's full on. It's not an outline. It's an actual.
Right.
Like if you could dance, like you can tell like when you look at the dress where she walks through the chair, but if you can make that a solid, that would be a person, dude. I mean, it's not always. I mean, yeah, most of them. I get what you're saying. Most of them are not as good. It's rare. It is kind of rare to catch something of that nature that is so clearly outlined, and you can tell that's a woman with a black dress from that era. Blonde hair. You can see the blonde hair, and like I said, you can see the color of her skin and her face. And like Gettysburg is the same way. Like you have soldiers and people walking around, apparitions of ghosts, spirits that are full on color. Like you can tell that's a Confederate outfit. You can even see the color of the cross belt that went across their uniform, and the shoes and their face and everything, color of their hair. I mean, but yes, that's a rarity. But I'm just saying that picture on the stairs, I want to, that's why I said, and that's why I brought up the mix between borderline apparition and shadow figure, because it almost looks like a shadow person. But if you look closely, man, I mean, I haven't really like dove into those pictures, but I think if you look closely, you can almost see like an aura outline around it.
Yeah, the etherical being or energy. What's interesting also about that photo is the individual that took it was standing so far away, and they had a really good phone or whatever they had to take it. But the fact that you could zoom in and really see the clarity of it is the part that's kind of unnerving, because normally you don't get that type of capturing of an apparition unless you're doing an investigation somewhere or you have a camera that's static, meaning it's sitting in place and it just does a film lapse of capturing a particular area over time. So for it to be that pronounced imagery wise, that clear, to be able to see the shape and to see the clothing and to see the semblance of a figure of an individual, whatever or whoever that is has to be thrown off some major, major energy to be able to have it go through the light spectrums and for it to show for us to even be able to perceive it. That's my 2 cents.
Well, didn't you say like the foundation's over 200 years old or something?
I don't want you to officially quote me on that, but I want to say it's pretty old. I know it's 100 and something years old. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you figure that spirit's been around for over 100 years, they got some power. So they built up enough. And before we go on any further, I want to thank the dude or the female from Germany. I always just go dude off of habit, but I want to thank the person in Germany that sent us that email. I hope we, answered your question. We do think that apparitions are everywhere. There's no certain point because spirits are everywhere. And if you got spirits everywhere, you're going to have apparitions and shadow figures and stuff like that. So I hope that answers your question, that we think they're everywhere. And thanks again for the email. But that photo, yeah, when you sent that, I mean, I looked at the first one. Of course, the first one doesn't have the apparition standing on the porch, just a house.
No.
And
he thought I just sent him a picture of a random home for no reason. He's doing his thing, and he's like, "What do you want?" Okay, that's yeah. It's a house. What do you need, man?
Well, I told you I thought that when you sent that, because I was driving down the road and I just glanced at it and I said, oh, he got one of the full spectrum, because it looks like a full spectrum photo.
And full spectrum. And I
said, oh, you got one of the
full spectrum. For anybody that doesn't know, is a camera that's able to capture all the light frequencies to show all the different colors, versus what we see.
And the photo, right? And the photo comes out sort of like that, like it comes out with a weird color. And so I thought, oh, you got one, because we got a couple full spectrum cameras and they stopped working, and for some reason batteries wouldn't charge or something. And I thought, oh, he got one of the full spectrum cameras working. So I just texted you back and I was like, what's this? And you go, you didn't see the figure on the porch? And I'm like, oh, no, let me let me go back and revisit this. No, I did not, because the first picture had nothing. So yeah, it was kind of weird, but an amazing catch. I would say that was a catch that, when you got something staring at you, or just staring out into the front yard or whatever, and then you get another photo of it actually turning, you can see that it's turning to walk away. I mean, that's pretty astounding. That's
yeah, and
that's a rare catch.
And speaking from a professional sense of knowing about videography and photography and so forth, it's one thing to be able to have an image and to utilize maybe software programs or different things to clean up clarity, or to sharpen something, or to diffuse it to make it to where it's easier to see. The thing that really struck me about that photo in itself is the fact of how you were able to see the definition of everything, the colors, the saturation, the movement, to do anything that you want to be able to do by looking at the photo as it is, which is pretty,
right, because when
pretty neat.
You can see and you can see when they turn, you can see like almost like when you turn, like the top half of your body kind of turn it, but you turn like normally you don't catch that. Like you're not paying attention to somebody making a turn, like turning left or right or whatever. But you can see like the top of the body's actually turned to the right a little bit before, like they're getting ready to move. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
If you imagine yourself standing still and looking straight ahead, and you get ready to make an immediate right turn, you're going to turn your upper body's going to swing first. And then you just automatically turn your whole body and walk, right? So this photo captures basically what you can see on the third photo, is that it actually, the upper half of the body's turned a little bit before they go on. You get what I'm saying there?
Oh, completely.
So, yeah. So that's amazing to me. That's one of the best. I'm going to put that probably in the top 5 best captures that I've seen in my whole time doing this. So
I will say this, that rivals almost the etherical being apparition that I saw 2 feet in front of me. But that's a story for another time.
Well, we're talking about apparitions. Go ahead and spit it out. Let it go, man.
Well,
So I send you a send it sticker.
and there you
Send
go.
it.
Right. I've spoken of this before. Basically, I was doing an investigation with a bunch of individuals in a room that was completely pitch black. The power's turned off to the facility. We had a candle in front of us on a table. There was about 8 people semicircled around it, and had a person to my right that was of a shorter stature than me because I'm pretty tall. We were all sitting down. And
Are you doing like a seance or something?
I was showing a old school methodology to be able to potentially use to communicate without using electronics within the paranormal world. And it was simply using a candle and utilizing a lit candle and asking questions. And they were able to see, for yes and no, the wick where the light is, or the flame would actually double in size and then go back down to the normal height as it's burning. And it was pretty astounding because a lot of people didn't know about that methodology. And we did that. And basically, it came down to the individual next to me, I knew was able to have the ability at times to, you could say, I guess, be a medium. And I remember asking this person a question, and with that single lit candle in front of us on the table, this person to my right was 2 feet away. Likewise, the person to my left. I was leading this exercise, and I asked a question. I didn't hear anything. And so I'm still talking to the group, and then still looking at the table, I say the person's name to my right again, and I don't hear anything. And so as I make my commentary about what I was talking about to the group in front of me, I look to my right. And when I look to my right, the individual to my right was turned facing me as if they were going to say something. And what was remarkable is when I looked to look at this person who has brown eyes, an olive complexion, and dark hair, like a blackish brown hair, I didn't see that person at all. I saw a older Caucasian white individual with pale skin, had to be late 70s, very thin face, period clothing on, probably from the mid 1700s, early 1800s. Her hair up in a bun. She had the spider hairs all down around the side of her face, and piercing light blue eyes. And I remember looking at this person, and I'm thinking to myself, it didn't catch up with my brain instinctively. It wasn't like, oh my God, who is this? It wasn't like, I don't recognize this. I just looked over and I saw this image, and then it caught up with me. I'm watching the person's mouth move, and I hear the lips move, and I hear the words, leave right now. And then at that point, that's when my brain was like, hey, something's not right. All of this transpired from the time I said the person's name to looking over and having this event unfold no more than 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity to me. And so I looked back at the candle for a split second, looked back at the individual, and I saw the person that I knew just sitting there with a blank, emotionless look on their face. And nobody really caught what was going on, but then that's when my common sense kicked in on the paranormal side. And then I was like, okay, everybody, we're going to cut a break for a little bit early, give you some breathing room, because we've been in this room for 45 minutes. We normally do an hour rotation because we had a lot of groups with the team I was on at the time to try different locations for EVPs and learn about equipment, different things. When I was part of a pretty big team of 13 team members, I was a lead investigator for them. And so everybody just filtered out of the room. We went outside. First thing I did is I brought the individual outside, and they were shaking. I got them some water, and I talked to them and, made sure they're okay for about 20 minutes. They had no recollection whatsoever of what happened after walking in that room initially. And they were clammy and sweaty. And I said, "Do you remember speaking to me or saying anything?" And they're like, "No, I just remember sitting down in the chair and we were doing our thing and I heard your voice and that was it." And so I was like, okay. So that was kind of like an isolated incident, and just made sure that person was good to go and just left it at that. And so there was a person that was part of the group that I knew somewhat well. So I was able to ask him a question. I said, towards the end, right before I stopped everything, I go, "Did you hear any strange words or voices or anything at all?" And they just said, "No, I just saw you turn your head and look at so-and-so next to you for, a few seconds, and that was it. And then you just said, 'We're done.'" And I was like, "Okay, cool," nonchalant. And so then I inquired with an individual that has been with that location for quite a long time and explained what the individual was that I saw. And so they ended up talking to me and producing a photo and showing me the main individual that ended up being from that home before it became a museum, and how her husband and her owned it, and how she had to leave Russia and leave her children over there to go with her husband's pursuits financially and business-wise in America. And he ended up passing away in the long run. And then she was saddled with debt and couldn't leave to go back to see her children. And she stayed at that place until she passed away. And from what I was able to gather at the end of the day was I was confronted with the apparition of the main woman that owned that home, that built it in the 1800s. And
Nice.
What was really breathtaking about the experience is, one, I saw this person as if they were there. It wasn't like a white, milky apparition type color. I saw the person's skin. I saw the piercing blue eyes. I heard the voice. That's the other thing. When I asked the individual if he heard anything, like I stated, the answer was no. So it showed me whatever or however that apparition was able to make it to where I only heard what they wanted to say and nobody else did. An experience.
Well, it's kind of like telekinesis, it's kind of like just between you and that apparition.
Right. And so what's really interesting about it is it gave levity to the fact that you can have more than one type of apparition, to where it's just the repeat of, every holiday, every October, every this time of year, at this time at night, you see the apparition walk down the hallway. Not to be the cliche.
Residual.
Right. The residual, not to be the cliche, but that's, generically what you see in movies and TV shows and entertainment. But this particular instance was well thought, formed, had intention, had visual clarity, had a cognizant sound. Rather, I heard, or maybe I was just close enough. Who knows? So that shows me there's more to it than just a image, or energy.
Right. And we've always said, like residual is just a replay. So it could be a colored apparition. It could be a shadow figure. It could be, whatever. It's a residual. It's just a retime and play. They don't acknowledge you. They don't interact with you. But what you had was a full on apparition that interacted with you. So it's an intelligent haunt. And you had an apparition. And I was going to kind of point out the being a disembodied voice, but if nobody else heard it, then I'm going to go with the telekinesis thing, because I've had that happen where a spirit can actually pretty much put words, tell you in your mind what they're saying, but nobody else can hear it. So, but continue. Sorry.
So, so, so,
So anyway,
so telekinesis is moving stuff with your mind. You're talking about telepathy, which is communication through the mind.
right, which aliens can use. Even there's been known for even some human beings that can do it. I've never seen it personally. That's just hearsay for me.
Right.
But for apparitions, man, apparitions, you know, ghosts, apparitions, they've been a subject and a fascination for a long time. Even some fear, you got the fear factor on it, and then sometimes even ridicule about them. They're basically supernatural entities. Some people say they're figments of our imagination. I don't believe that at all.
I don't either.
I don't believe.
I think
Go ahead.
I think you experience too much and have too much free thought to just say, "Oh, this is just a figment of my imagination." Because if one person has the experience, that's one thing. But if two people have it and it's the same exact experience, then that figment of imagination hypotheses or explanation is debunked and out the window.
Right, and if we talk about apparitions are everywhere, and a lot of people have seen them everywhere, then how that's a whole lot of imagination.
Yeah, right. That's
what I'm saying.
Exactly.
So for somebody to say that, I mean, that's the ridicule part. Is it's just a figment of your imagination. Well, just and it's like I tell people, everybody's had a paranormal experience. You've seen something out the corner of your eye in your house or in a building or whatever, and you're the only one there. So did you just see an apparition or a shadow figure or something move out of the corner of your eye? So, but that's a figment of your imagination, bro. Don't worry about it. No, I'm never going to say that because there's too many accounts. I mean, heck, we just put up 3 photos of an apparition on the front porch of a house, a museum or whatever it is actually. And basically the thing is like I said, there's too many accounts. Like there's too many accounts in Gettysburg alone to say that you're telling me all those tourists that go to Gettysburg to visit that battlefield had that same imagination. I don't think so. So, the term apparition can evoke different images for different people. So they say. So to some, it may be an unsettling figure that appears suddenly in one's bedroom late at night. To others, it could represent a benevolent spirit meant to offer guidance or protection. That I can ride the train on that one because that is true. I mean, you're going to see some people, anything paranormal in the dark in your bedroom is going to be unsettling, period. If you have not had any kind of touch with the paranormal and all of a sudden it happens, yes, it's going to be unsettling. So basically, they're saying there's no denying that the idea of ghosts and spirits has been around throughout history in many cultures across the world. This is some research that I've done, by the way. It's basically ideas about apparitions have changed over time and examined current theories as to their origin and purpose. Now, that was kind of the question that we were asked, I guess. So, historical perspectives on apparitions, they come from like ancient religion influence to modern day theories. So the phenomenon of ghostly encounters basically remains an elusive topic. I mean, it's like shadow people. It's still people trying to understand it. So while some dismiss this experience, the mere figments of an active imagination, here we go with imagination again, but others accept them as tangible proof of the paranormal. I will get on board with that. Basically, whether it's driven by a superstition or scientific curiosity, every individual is left to draw their own conclusions, which, we always tell people we're not trying to change your mind on the paranormal, but we'd like, like I always tell a person that's religious, if I'm going to sit there and listen to you talk to me about religion and God and Jesus and stuff, then please just take into consideration when I talk to you about the paranormal, and I'm not talking to you about demons. So I wish there is. I mean, I can talk to some, and I have talked to some that are that level that, you know, they can listen to me and go, wow, that's okay. I can kind of see that. But as we look into the different types of apparitions pretty much seen throughout time, I want to turn the attention towards what exactly some people think they are and why they may occur. And the types of apparitions, you can start by talking about spectral apparitions. You know what a spectral apparition is?
Go ahead and tell me what your opinion is on it.
Okay, well, this happens to be the most common type of apparition. Spectral apparitions basically are mysterious, spooky entities that often appear during mystical encounters known as paranormal activity. These visitors typically manifest themselves in a form of a human or animal-like figure, sometimes appearing to be transparent or having a glow about them. And these figures range from kindly spirits offering comfort to malevolent forces seeking revenge for wrongs done by living beings. Now, however, they present themselves, these supernatural visitations can strike fear into the hearts of those who witness them, leaving behind lasting impressions that will not soon be forgotten. So, number one, spectral apparitions. And that's what they say is the most common type of apparition, which I can kind of see that. And so the second one would be poltergeist. You know, poltergeist is. So
Yes.
you're moving from spectral apparition to poltergeist, which is another form of supernatural entity that can be encountered during paranormal activity, of course. Now, they're saying these mischievous entities possess remarkable powers and aren't afraid to use them. Now, when you talk about poltergeist activity, you're talking when something moves in the house, the dishes fly across the room, the cabinet doors open and close. That's mainly poltergeist activity. So they say often causing chaos with their loud noises and destructive behavior, which is what I just mentioned. So they have been known to move objects around. I just mentioned banging doors, throw items across the room, or even cause electrical appliances to malfunction. Now, poltergeists rarely show themselves in a physical form, but their presence is unmistakable when they're around. Yes, they are. I will agree with that. You not only don't see them, but that's why we call it poltergeist activity, not poltergeist apparition, because you don't really see them, but they're very mischievous and malevolent about moving stuff or throwing things at you or whatever. So some of these are unexplained phenomena to inexplicable acts of violence. These malevolent entities will leave no doubt as to why they should be feared. Now, some people are afraid of that. Of course, I don't really care. If you're throwing stuff at me, I want you to throw more. But
we're gonna go investigate a poltergeist and walk in with catcher mitts with baseball hats
right.
on.
Instead of catcher face mask on.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
hey, do you bring any gear to an investigation? Yeah, I bring this catcher's mask and mitt.
Yeah,
why? Well, if they throw something at me, I'm protected.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if you ever believe that contact with one of these worldly forces is not to take, you know, basically don't take any chances, which we've always said. Now, so after explaining a few of those, then you go into, I want to get into a little bit of the scientific, which I don't like to, but I'm going to. So they say they're like a mysterious occurrence, of course, been reported throughout history. In the scientific community, there is much debate surrounding these phenomena as to whether they can be explained by natural or supernatural forces. Now, if I see a plate flying across the room and it shot out of a cabinet, I'm not going to call that a natural cause. You call whatever you want, but don't call it natural, because that is not natural.
True.
So most agree that the phenomenon such as telepathy, which we talked about, clairvoyance, and my southern accent again, precognition might
Precog.
play a role.
Yep.
Yes, precog. They had a movie about that, didn't they? They had precogs that were three of them in a bathtub, and they can tell the future or whatever. Remember that movie? What was that?
No,
was that
no,
Matt Damon?
just you, man, just you. I don't know what you're watching, but that's.
There was a movie. I want to give you that movie here in a minute. I'm gonna think of it. You never seen that? I think it was Matt Damon, and he stole one of the precogs because it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to the. So anyway, there was a movie about it. So yeah, so they play a role in some cases of apparitional experiences. Additionally, some researchers believe that the underlying spiritual force behind certain manifestations is there's like two most popular theories involving apparitions. Now, these are, I guess, the scientific theories. Natural causes is one, such as a hypnagogic, whatever, hallucinations, like like you're hypnotized, like a
hypnotherapist.
Yeah, it's like a hallucination, but it's anyway caused by sleep deprivation or mental illness.
Hallucinations.
Yes, hypnagogic, whatever, hallucinations.
I just like hearing. I just like hearing you say majotic.
Yeah, whatever. Listen, man. I know people listening to this are going, okay, you got the redneck that can't say nothing, and you got the smart guy that talks. It's like, it's all right.
You know, someone has their name up on a whiteboard somewhere, and they're just writing down another dash, like keeping score. Okay, this one's for Pax, this one's for Dalton.
Well, I was talking to a lady the other day on online that was listening to our podcast, and she's like, "You got such a deep accent." And I'm like, "Well, it's a Southern thing, you know." Of course, she was from England, actually, but anyway, so basically, psychological responses from fear experienced when encountering something unknown, magnetic disturbances, reflection of surfaces, and even optical illusions created by light refraction and shadows.
Yep.
Now, the second one, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
No, I was just saying, I was agreeing with you. I said, yep.
Yeah, okay. So the second one was supernatural forces. Okay, so we went from natural causes, which I can see that, like sleep deprivation. You know, even we've talked about, even some medications give off hallucinations.
Oh, they do. Everything affects the brain chemically and stuff, and throws off balances and faculties and the way things are perceived.
Right. So we've talked about those kind of, I can see that. Like I can go along the lines of those natural causes. Now, supernatural forces, including the presence of unseen spirits or entities, they list AP, astral projection, the belief that one's consciousness can travel outside their body. We talked about that in the podcast, our astral projection podcast. Reincarnation memories being triggered through deep emotional connections to past lives. Residual energy. We just talked about residual hauntings, basically seeing the apparition, they don't interact, blah, blah, blah. Left at sites of traumatic events. Now, the traumatic events I don't agree with because residual haunts are everywhere. They're just normal. I've had friends of mine say, "Hey, why do I see my grandma at 2 a.m. every Thursday walking down the hallway through the kitchen? She disappears." I'm like, that's a residual haunt. She doesn't look at you. She doesn't see that you're there. So I wouldn't say that residual energy left at sites of traumatic events is a true statement. I would say residual energy left at sites is a true statement. And time slips where people experience visions of the past and the future. Now, while both sides offer compelling explanations for why apparitions occur, further research is needed. See, they still don't understand completely to determine what actually lies behind this phenomenon. As such, it's important to look critically at all evidence before drawing any conclusions about the origins of apparitions. So, popular beliefs, it is estimated, this is an estimate off a chart that I read a while back, nearly 50% of the people claim they have seen some type of ghost apparition that have captured the human imagination. Here we go, imagination for centuries, with many cultures having their own mystical origins and cultural interceptions and actually interpretations below, basically their own kind of, hey, this is what I seen thing. That's what I'm getting from that.
Yeah.
So these entities are often interpreted differently depending on one's belief. That's what I just kind of said, creating an interesting web of superstition. So you have the basically a poltergeist we talked about, a noisy spirit, a mischievous entity, and they say the German word meaning. The German word meaning is, can you guess it? What's the German word meaning for poltergeist?
Poltergeist.
Noise.
There you go.
Noise. Okay, Germany. I give you one. All right. Shadow figures. A dark shadow figure spotted in peripheral vision. We talked about that, right? Like I said, everybody's seen or has had a paranormal experience. Everybody's had to have seen something out the corner of the eye of their peripheral vision, shadow figure. The origin is folklore tradition. So I don't think folklore tradition would fit with shadow figures because shadow figures are common. I mean, they're pretty common to us investigators, not to normal people. So, and then the last one is a wraith. It's a transparent, ghostly being. Origin is Old English. So I can see that being that, but we don't talk about too many wraiths because it's pretty much all the stuff we talk about anyway. So the ghostly, basically, we've already said that it's been connected to supernatural activity. I don't know, it's very common. And they say that it's communicating with an apparition is certainly possible. Of course, well, you just told us a story where you communicated with one.
Yep.
And
well, it was more or less one way, but yeah.
Right, because now what you did is to going into the psychic communication can be used to reach out to the spiritual realm and connect with these mysterious entities.
Yep.
So basically, what you had was you had a visual psychic communication with this entity, and basically, an apparition in parapsychology, an apparitional experience is an anomalous experience, is what they call it, anomalous, in which typically a person is briefly seen or otherwise felt to be present. I've never heard anybody term it anomalous, but that's what they're saying. So, I mean, I can go on and on about some of this stuff, the scientific parts.
I think we should jump into the next subject matter of the dangers of the paranormal world.
Yeah, we can do that, and we should do definitely. You start these podcasts and you go, all right, kind of. We're going to talk a little bit about this, a little bit about that, but you don't realize how deep the rabbit hole goes once you open it up.
Oh, it goes deep. It goes deep.
So I think we should do a part 2 on the apparition because there is a lot. Like in Catholic, just real quick, there was a Marian apparition, and the Marian apparitions are reported supernatural apparitions by Mary, the mother of Jesus, and they give a list of alleged events concerning notable Marian apparitions, which have either been approved by a major Christian church or which retain significant despite of the absence of official approval because, of course, they don't want to talk about the paranormal. But, think about when people see Mother Mary, or isn't she the one that actually cries? You'll see a tear roll down her face or something.
Yep.
Every now and then. So I mean, there's a lot to get into once you open this door. But so to you, man, to ask you, because I've been rambling on about apparitions, what's some of the dangers that you think or that you know of that, and I'm talking everything, like what dangers could possibly happen during an investigation or even doing a haunted tour? People don't realize that just going on a haunted tour could have something. So what do you think about it?
Well, speaking in a sense professionally, and when I mean professionally, I mean by from my experiences being a professional paranormal investigator, researcher, rather it's been in things I've encountered in groups by myself or with a team, just me and Dalton, or other teams I've had the privilege of being a part of at certain points in my life, I've seen a variety of things that have happened that have been bad. It's interesting because the reality of it is when you watch TV shows, they're for entertainment. When you watch movies, they're normally for scare factor. You very rarely watch a movie or TV show where it has a great conclusion and it's uplifting and it's, yay, this happened and, this happened to me physically and it was a great experience. That's not how it is in the paranormal world. It's cause and effect. You try to do some things, you get certain results. And what I mean by that is that when you investigate, you ask questions, you utilize devices, you potentially use energy, or you use different methodologies to, I don't want to use the word provoke, but to try to garner or get a response. And depending on what you do, where you're at, who you are, will elicit certain things to happen, bad or good. Now, for the negative side, basically, I've seen detrimentally to people's life, unfortunately. I've seen people lose their jobs being esteemed, accredited, PhD holding individuals with doctorate degrees, top of their field, to going into, I don't want to say schizophrenia, but losing themselves mentally and emotionally and psychologically because of things they've experienced. Sadly, I've seen people become inflicted with wounds, namely scratches or bruises, or have images shared with them in their head or seen in person that nobody should ever be subject to, that they can't get out of their mind. I've experienced people being taken over by entities straight up, to where they literally become a vessel and they are no longer in charge of themselves. The spirit that's there took over their body and is communicating through them. You hear an inflection change in their voice. You see the tonal structure in their face change. You see their eyes change. Knowledge and information this person could have never known. They know all of these particular things that they have no business knowing from different time periods, or guarded information that you will only know if you have a certain type of job or profession.
And let me say something about that real quick.
Yeah.
Most of the time, because I know the first thing when you just said what you said, first thing is what pop people's head is possession, that they were possessed. No, there is a thing called channeling. So a spirit can actually channel through you, or they're not fully possessing you. They're just using you a little bit. It's like a light. I'm going to call it. Let me just put it out as a lightweight possession. It's not a true possession. So when this person's kind of taken over, they're kind of channeling through them to, make them say things or do things that, possibly they never could know or do. Or you get the famous, they stand there and stare at you weirdly. They don't say nothing.
Yeah.
It's like you have a person that talks to you and is communicating through the investigation, and all of a sudden they have this really solid look on their face and they're just staring at you like they're going to stab you with a 6-inch blade. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, their demeanor changes, their persona changes. And that's something else
Right.
that I've seen a lot too, is something as simple as that. Not necessarily the voice. I've seen people's eye color change. I can't even put a freaking an explanation on that one or come up with anything logical when I've investigated before. Unfortunately, the majority of these places where I've witnessed this, and I'm not talking, this is not all the same individual I'm referencing. I'm talking easily a half dozen. These are all things that are very real, that do exist out there, that for whatever reason, these poor individuals were chosen or picked to be messed with. And being a professional paranormal investigator, and I hold that phrase not loosely, but in a regard of knowing when you put somebody's well-being above your own esteemed level of what you think you can understand or know, or education or experience. Because I've known individuals to keep digging at something and keep trying to figure stuff out and try to find resolves for incidences. And the reality is, you have to know logically when you've done what you can do within the scope of what you're trying to help with. So at times, I've had to refer people to other individuals that deal with things on theology in different levels that are way above me, that are on the things that you see on TV of movies and stuff, because that's not my wheelhouse. And unfortunately, there's only so much I can do from my own understanding of being in the paranormal world or my experiences I've had firsthand. To circle back around for the detriments of the paranormal world, sometimes it could be simply as falling asleep and having dreams or having experiences or witnessing things or being stuck and not being able to wake up the way you would normally wake up. A lot of people say, hey, oh, those are dreams, or that's psychosis, or there's, a psychological reason or chemical imbalance or different things. Sometimes that's not the case. I've heard stories from individuals of things that they experienced and things they saw when they dreamed, that it doesn't make a difference how well educated they are or not, or experiences in their life. The things that they're describing and saw, this is nothing that you'd see on TV. There's no place that they could go to get this type of imagery and say, hey, yeah, maybe it's because I watched this show, or maybe it's because I had this experience. It's sobering. It shows you that no matter how much humanity wants to think, regardless of our knowledge that we learn about things, how much understanding or baseline we have on science, on physiology, on molecular level for, proteins and energy and atomic value and dark matter and light matter and everything, none of that holds any weight to the paranormal world, because we have no way to judge it or measure it. That's still the taboo of society, and something that there's no book on it. I mean, let me take that back. There's tons of books on it, but there's no de facto.
I was gonna say, think about what you're saying again.
But there's no de facto. This is your guidebook on the paranormal. You have everybody's experiences, but But the other thing is I've known people that have woken up with bruises all over their body, or even during an investigation had bruises materialize in the form of handprints or welts or scratches down their back or their arm or their leg, burning feelings on their body when they're not next to an open flame. They are completely, it's cold. It's 50 degrees outside.
Right.
They feel like they're getting burned. They roll up their flannel shirt and you can visibly see an arm, not arm, but handprint, the webbing of the spacing of the fingers spread away, wrapped around their forearm. It doesn't make logical sense that we hold of what we found for our foundation of logic, but it's there. And with anybody that is listening to me right now and has had these experiences, know that you're not alone. All of this is real, from my opinion and in my experiences. Maybe one day I'll write a book about all my experiences. I'm sure if anybody that's listened to every podcast up until this one right now, you're probably going, look, man, either you're real good at spinning stuff or you've had a crazy life, and you got to have a autobiography and a movie. But my whole point is that I take it all with a grain of salt. I know there's other things out there that are bigger and badder than humanity, especially on the paranormal side or the realm of energy or astral planes or wherever you want to go about it. But I'm humbled by it because I know for everything I do learn, there's umpteenth millions of experiences and information I don't know. And so,
and that's Go ahead.
I just look at it as this. For every single time something new happens that I am witness to, I just put it in my bag of, okay, this happened. What were the conditions? How did it happen? Let me just remember this, because it might be information that I might be able to utilize the next time I have an investigation, that I can help somebody lend credence to their experience as far as it goes. So,
And that's a lot of people, man. You should listen. I'm going to put this out there as advice, not that I'm telling people what to do. If you run across an experienced paranormal investigator, you should take heed of what they say about going in, just running into a building. We, as professionals, and I call us professionals because that's what we are. We enjoy what we do. That's a professional, and we do it very well.
But we also have the education and experience to back up anything we say. That's the other important thing.
Right. Right. And that's what I'm getting at, is that we know beforehand what kind of place we're walking into. We don't, every now and then we get a place that, and we said this before in other podcasts, we've said, hey, they'll tell you what's going on, and you get there and you find out it's totally different, or it's worse than what has been said is going on. So, but I would say a good 90% of the time, we know what we walk into. I mean, we know exactly where we're going. We've done the research on it. We've done what we could to figure it out. Now, is it going to change when we get there? Possibly could. It possibly could go bad. It could go good. It could do whatever. But but what I'm saying is we have an idea of what we're getting into. If you just grab a K2 and a flashlight and you see an abandoned building down the street, you don't know nothing about that. And you're just going to go walk into that building with no knowledge of what that place was or about, or you might know what it was. Let's say it used to be an old candy factory, but what was it before that? Is that the original candy factory that was built from the ground up? But if that building is from the 1920s, and here you are in 2024 or 22 or whatever you started investigating, was that the original thing that was in that building, or was something there before that? Because that's what people don't understand. When you go to investigate, yeah, you might know, hey, that was Jimmy John's house right there. And now it's abandoned. And it's been haunted. Okay, but who lived there before? Who built that house? What foundation is it on? What kind of property is it on? What was there before that house, and what was in it when the house was built? That's, people don't take time to do that kind of research, and that's dangerous in itself, because again, you're going into an unknown environment. Now, I had a question the other day by Silver Vixen. I mentioned her in the beginning, and she's over in Britain, and she sells crystals. Like, she sells a lot of crystals to Wiccans and pagans, that use crystals. And she asked me, she said, do you use like any type of crystals for, say, protection? I kind of told her that's a long story. So, and the reason I say a long story is because I really couldn't type everything I wanted to say at that time. But my thing is her total question was, I went and looked it back up. Do you believe in crystals for protection with paranormal? We talked about using stones, right? You used a certain stone, you put in your pocket, and you actually got touched.
Different minerals.
Right. So my belief on that, to answer that question real quick,
and just to rephrase it, I wasn't touched. I was grabbed.
Okay.
in the leg. What it came down to, just to give context, I was doing an investigation with a group. I had this mineral / rock in my cargo pocket in my leg that was supposed to protect me, quote unquote, that somebody gave me as a courtesy to be polite one day. So I said, sure. I threw it in my pocket. And so I was doing my investigation with a group of people. And then I made a comment about there's things that are protecting me, blah, blah, blah. And I kid you not, right after I said that, I felt a handprint go down on my leg, push that rock into my leg a little bit. Like, yeah, you mean this? I don't think so. So,
right, and you can listen to our podcast on energy, chakras, and orbs, and it's in that episode that we talk about that. But I believe in that episode and another episode. I don't remember which one. I mentioned this several times. I don't believe in using crystals or stones or objects, and the reason being is because you never know what you're dealing with. Like, you don't know. You have an idea of what you're dealing with, and that can change really quickly. So we've walked into several investigations where we think we're dealing with one or two entities. We wind up dealing with 5, 6, 10, 12 entities, and some of them ain't very friendly. And so my thing is, what I've always said was, you can bring a truckload, a tractor trailer load of everything that you can think of, because that's what you're going to need to do. And even after you do that, like he said, he had a protection stone. That stone was meant for entities not to touch you. He explained it, and the entity grabbed him anyway.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, ha ha, the stone don't work.
Right.
So my belief in crystals and the paranormal, yes. Wiccan, okay, so if you get to the Wiccan side of it and take a negative energy out of your home, they have little brooms, they sweep the energy out. They got all kinds of way to,
Different methodologies is what he's saying.
right. And they got different ways to, and crystals is one of them. But using stuff for paranormal, no. I don't see anything, and I have not seen anything that will protect you from the harm that can happen. Now, the reason I mention that is because we're talking about the dangers of paranormal. So when you think that you're going to go outside and say your little prayer of light, you can do that. I'm not telling you not to, but don't be surprised if something happens or if something follows you home. It doesn't have to be an actual spirit that follows you home. You can pull the dark energy out of that place that attaches to you and take that dark energy home with you, and it can ruin your life. It can just, or it can just, I mean, when I say ruin your life, that's like all different measures. Like, it could ruin your relationship. It can ruin your financial. It can ruin this, or it can just ruin your well-being, your mentality, your whole health. Like, your health can deteriorate. And you really don't know what's the cause. You go to the doc says you're fine, or they can't figure it out, but you don't realize you just pulled that dark energy out of that building. So, other than, I mean, I could go on and on about this, to be honest with you. It just be careful.
Yeah, just be careful when you do the paranormal. There's lots of things to it, and there's people from all over the world have different belief systems, different theologies they subscribe to, different methodologies for protection. You go with what you believe with, research where you're going to go before you do it, know what you're kind of going against, and make good decisions is what it comes down to ultimately.
Yeah, don't be the one, you always got one in the group doesn't believe in it. And they're like, hey, I know this asylum up the road. It used to be a state asylum from the 1930s. Let's go in there. No, don't do that. Don't listen to that guy. Say, hey, if you want to go up in there, and probably one of the worst places you can go is an asylum or a prison or anywhere where there's really dark stuff that happened there, like murders, or in asylums they did electric shock therapy and stuff like that. I mean, I've been in them places, and I've been there because I know what I'm doing, and I was with other professionals that knew what they were doing. And there is some places that, the place itself would not let us go investigate because it was just too dangerous. And they just told us straight up, even though we were begging, hey, let us go, man. We got this. Let us sign a form. Let us sign a waiver, because I'm into that. Like, I'm like, let's go to that area. That's where I want to go. But that's me.
Yep. No, I definitely understand that.
And so, but the one thing, we talked about the physical aspect, the mental aspect, the aspect of things following you home. The one thing that nobody ever talks about is that the fact that these locations often pose significant physical damage. Like, you don't realize when you go into an old building like that, they may have weak floorboards or hidden hazards like exposed wires, broken glass, sharp objects. You're basically investigating an abandoned place that has no power. So you really, I mean, even with a flashlight, I mean, yeah, okay. Most of the time, I mean, Pax will tell you, we don't really use our flashlights unless we necessarily have to. We get our eyes adapted to the dark, and we walk through the place in the daytime. So we got the layout in our mind, and we kind of know where we want to go and what sections we want to investigate. And we don't really turn on our lights. Most professionals don't really turn on their lights and use them all the time. They stay in the dark. That's just the way we do things. There is investigators that carry flashlights and keep them on at all times, or they leave a light on. I understand you guys are scared of the dark. That's fine. Call us later. It's okay. But it's I'm not that guy. Like, I go into a dark area, I'm going in a dark area. Now, am I exposing myself to these physical dangers? Yes, I am. Because if I don't, but here's the thing. Like I said, we've walked the place constantly during the daytime. So we foreknow that, hey, when you get to this area, we don't want to go over here. There's a weak floor, or there's a hole in the floor, or there's something there. We'll put something there. Like we'll put something there, a chair or something that says, hey, remember there's something here. So besides the the weak floorboards and the stuff that can cut you or hurt you, the one thing that's unseen, you have the unseen dangers. And I'm not talking spirits. I'm talking mold. I'm talking asbestos or other chemicals that you can't see that are in the air. So if you
Yeah.
walk into, an abandoned building, and that place was built in the 60s, and they didn't take the asbestos out of there, which they probably should have. I mean, that rule of getting rid of asbestos was a long time ago, but they should have the asbestos gone. But what if it don't? Or what if the place has black mold and you're breathing that in and you don't even know it?
Or
I don't know how many.
if you're walking and the foundation's unstable, next thing you know, your foot goes through the floor. I've
Right,
I've experienced that, and it's unpleasant, and it gets you to your wits real quick because you think you're good, and the next thing you know, you're not. So,
right. Hence, I mentioned the weak floorboards,
mm-hmm.
and that's happened. And I've been in places where, I've walked into a room and I'm smelling something. I'm like, what's that? That smell is familiar. And I'll turn my light on real quick and I'll look up and I go, yeah, we need to leave this room. It's got asbestos in the ceiling. And we leave the room. Now, the rest of the building might have been cleared of asbestos. So we make sure we stay in those parts. Now, you see these TV shows and you get on to the shows. I'm not going to mention the one show, but a lot of times you'll see him wearing a respirator mask. He has a problem breathing in dusty areas. I get it. Maybe we all should wear a respirator mask when we investigate, but it's not something we think about. Even as professionals, we don't think about. There's a lot of TV shows that I'm sure what you're not understanding is that people have been in that building, inspected that building, and they make sure that there's no hazards like that. That's why they film there. So these unseen things can lead to respiratory issues or other severe health complications. Navigating through an old factory might present falling hazards, unstable structures that can collapse at any time. I think we've had that one time where we were in an old building and a piece of the ceiling fell off. Like it just, like the, what do you call that? Not the popcorn ceiling or there's a layer of stuff they put up there. Anyway, I can't think of the name, but anyway, it was all broken up, but like a piece of it. Now we couldn't call it paranormal because obviously we don't know if it was paranormal activity or not. It just fell off the ceiling and it landed right beside us. And, you got stuff like that. So, you got old hospitals and prisons and schools that may discard medical equipment, tangled metal or debris, which may lead to injury. We mentioned that. Of course, we know low visibility. We're always in low visibility, if no visibility at all. You got slip and fall accidents. If it rains during the investigation and the roof leaks and you don't really know it, like it was dry when you walked through there. I've had that happen in my boots, in my cowboy boots. I've walked back into that room and didn't realize the roof was leaking, and I almost slipped and started breakdancing. Literally, it was like that. So I was like, "Oops! Oh, there we go." I almost hit the ground, but it's happening. It will happen, and it will continue to happen. And you got just all kinds of physical obstacles that you can trip on, cut yourself, and do whatever. Now, the other danger that I'm going to lead into, and I've had this happen doing air conditioning work, but the other danger you often overlook is the possible of encountering wild animals or insects, poisonous spiders, that might crawl on you when you investigate. A lot of people, I see investigators, you won't ever see me like now. If I'm at the May Stringer house, I'll sit on the floor. If I'm at another museum that I know is a museum that's air conditioned, I'll sit on the floor. But when I go to an asylum, a jail, or anything like that that's been abandoned and shut down for a while, you will never catch me sitting on the floor for the reason of spiders and ants and things that, creepy crawlies that can get on you and bite you, and you don't know it until you leave. But you also got, rats, raccoons, bats, even snakes, a lot of snakes. They can, they can be in these places. And when I tell you about my air conditioning thing, I crawled under a mobile home it was doing a AC job, and I had to get under the mobile home to figure out what was going on. And I kept hearing this. I think I told you like years ago when I was doing AC that, this happened, but you didn't think nothing of it. I was worried about snakes. Like I'm down there by the water. I'm worried about snakes. In Florida, snakes and spiders. First thing I'm worried about. So I'm crawling under there and I'm like, man, I hope there ain't no snake under here waiting for me. And I'm trying to hurry up and get to where I need to get. And all of a sudden I hear this hissing sound, like a hissing, but a weird sound. And I'm like, what is that? And so I shine my light down at the corner, like within probably, I'd say 50, 60 feet from me. And there's a big old gator down there guarding its young. I'm like, nope, I'm out.
That's interesting. So tell me this, we'll jump on into the last subject here. What's your thoughts on disembodied voices? Doing investigations. Yeah. What first of all, what is a disembodied voice or voice in general during an investigation mean to you? What is it in your words?
Well, disembodied voice is basically, it's a voice. It's you don't have a human body or a visible form. You just hear it. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I don't know really what's your explanation, because that's pretty simple, cut and dry to me. It's just a voice you hear, and nobody's there. You just hear the voice.
Well, I'm right there with you on that. I would say also it's something that you hear, but you can't identify where it's coming from because you don't have a point of origin, but you hear it. For experiences wise, I've heard voices a few times. Once I was in St. Augustine and I was in a bed and breakfast that was haunted. And I once heard a man say hello to me, point blank, clear as day. I was in a little small one bedroom room on the third floor in this wooden cottage type setup. And it wasn't bigger than anything. Maybe it was a 10 by 10 at the most. It was a small room, but the voice was loud and boisterous, and I was just like, man. Another time I was at the May Stringer house and I was using a ghost box, and I heard a little girl say hello to me and start giggling and laughing, but I was using a device for that. Another time I was in Casadega, Florida, and I was out in the middle of the woods where they have a park out there. And in the woods, and back in the day, there used to be a ward out there where they had TB, tuberculosis for children, and a whole bunch of them died, unfortunately, back in the early 1900s, I guess. And I didn't have any devices or anything. And I heard a little girl laugh. I felt a tug on my left leg, my pant leg. And then I felt a presence that was very warm and gentle. And then I heard a laugh again, but it wasn't in the same location like last time. Like if I had to pick a clock, if you look at a clock 1 to 12 and you see how it looks on the wall, when I had the first laugh, I heard it was like at my 7 o'clock position. If I'm in the middle, it was to my back left. But then the next time I heard it, it was 3 o'clock about 2:00, and hearing it, because I remember I had a ball that I threw on the ground for them to play with and a little dolly, and that's when I was like, man. Then I was at another place and I heard a voice, but it wasn't exterior, it was interior, like inside my head, like if I have headphones on, and it was just for me and no one else heard it. And I realized through these experiences, likewise, like with the apparition, the other side can pick and choose how they want you to perceive things and hear things. Rather it's exterior, away from you, a few feet away, maybe louder, or if it's inside you, which I think is interesting that they can pick and choose. I once was.
They can also pick and choose what you smell too, like different.
Oh yeah,
different scents.
Oh yeah, cigar smoke, perfumes. That one time we were doing the investigation in Casadega at the Founder's Steps where it burnt down. We were telling the story about it, and then we were in that group together, and we all started coughing real bad because we smelled smoke, like we were in the middle of a forest fire.
And if you want to get, to the evil side or the demonic, the biblical side, if you smell sulfur, that ain't a good sign.
No. Not at all. But to get back, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead and finish. But like I said, there's a delay in this headset.
Oh yeah. To get back to the disembodied voices, though, it's interesting because I've also have experienced it to where there's the throwing of voices where it sounds like it's far away for one person, but then another person hears something close at the same moment. I've experienced that, and where I've been part of a group before investigating stuff. So perception wise, it's able to give other individuals different perspectives, but hearing the same thing, which I found pretty interesting. Right. So now my experiences of hearing voices is not going to be ideal or common for most people. I've learned throughout my adventures being a paranormal investigator that some people are prone just to getting activity all the time. How or why? I could come up with a million reasons. It could be their eye color, their hair color, their family history, their bloodline, their energy they have inside them, their soul, you name it, bazillion reasons. But it is how it is. And then there's individuals that investigate, and never have any experiences. And I know it gets daunting and frustrating, but it's one of those things that the other side chooses if and when you may experience something or what they show.
Well, you can't walk into an investigation. We said this. You can't walk into it with a negative attitude or a disbelief. Like, I mean, you can be a skeptic, but if you don't walk into a place with an open mind, at least let your mind be opened a little bit, you probably won't experience anything because they know it and they don't want to deal with most of them don't want to deal with the negativity anyway. Now, the ones that deal with the negativity and actually, those spirits are probably not the spirits you want to deal with. If they're just going to deal with your negativity and they're doing things, you're most likely going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Or you're going to take something home you don't want. So I've had some experiences with disembodied voices, and yes, I'm moving around. But the one that I've had one at the asylum up there in Virginia. I can't think of the name. Oh, St. Albans. I did some stuff with some certain people up there, and we were in the shock therapy room, and somebody started. We weren't getting no evidence. And one of the guys that I did it, he's well known investigator. He was down there with us, and somebody just, out of the blue was like, man, I'm hungry. I think I'm going to get something to eat. And we started talking about food. And one guy said, I bet the food in here was just awful. And all of a sudden, one of the flashlights went off. And we're like, okay, we'll talk about food. So long story short about that, we started talking about food. We got activity. And one guy was like, I bet you'd want to, because we're in Virginia, right? So he's like, I bet you want a steak or something. And the light didn't really come on right away. And so I spoke up. I don't know why I thought about this. It might be something they put in my mind, but I said, how about a big old fat chicken fried steak with some mashed potatoes and green beans and a sweet tea? And all of a sudden, right after that, you heard this, yes. And we all looked at each other. You could see everybody looking because there's a little bit of the moonlight coming through the window. You see everybody looking at each other, and we're like, did y'all just hear that? And they're like, yeah. And then, did you say that? No, we didn't. And everybody, and we made everybody in the room. There was probably 7 people in the room. And we made everybody in the room say yes. Normally, just go yes. And
Yep.
it did not sound like none of those people. That's how we verified that it was a ghost, a spirit, just played out, busted out, yes. Right after I said chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a sweet tea.
There you go. So,
But the second one, which probably tops the record, was the May Stringer. And I talked about that in the May Stringer episode and another episode where I was talking about the daughter fell off the balcony, and y'all can go listen to those episodes and get the gist on that story of that disembodied voice. But real quick, so mediums and skeptics, they all have different ideas of what causes these disembodied voices, and there's generally 2 main arguments: voices from ghosts or spirits, and a scientific explanation. It's always a scientific explanation behind it. That voices are actually coming from inside someone's head. Well, we have talked about that a spirit can put thoughts into your mind, or you can hear them like I do. Like, that's one of my abilities, is to be able to hear them talking. It's aggravating because when I walk into public places, I have to shut myself down. I've said this before, because I don't want to hear all the spirits following all these people, especially if I'm in a mall or truck stop or somewhere where it's really busy. I don't want to listen to it. So I have to shut myself down. So basically, you have the ghost or spirit part, and it says, in the research that I've done, that most obvious source behind disembodied voices are ghosts. Many mediums believe that these voices are inherently evil or sinister. Now, I don't believe that. However, reports of ghost voices belonging to benevolent spirits have also been reported. Now, I can fall in line with the fact that, some of it might be evil or sinister, but not all of it is. It's kind of like saying religious people telling me that I'm paranormal investigator, I'm chasing demons. That's not true. I don't, and I think you can attest to this. I don't think I've ever done an investigation where anything told me not to believe in God or don't read the Bible or anything religious. What it is basically a person that lives somewhere at a certain time, and they're telling us their story. They're telling us maybe how they died or they had kids or what kind of life they lived. I've never had anything else than that. Now, dealing with some of the demonic parts of the aspect where I've dealt with a couple of demonic things, that didn't even tell me not to believe in God or Jesus. It was just a whole, I'm not going to get deep into that. It's a whole nother subject, but that was just a whole nother type of investigation. So I don't believe that. I mean, when you say mediums, I know a bunch of mediums, and I never heard them say that these voices are inherently evil or sinister. I've never heard them say that. So that's kind of new to me. But they want to know, why are these spirits trying to communicate in such a creepy way? Well, it's creepy to some, but cool. Like, to me, it's cool. Like, all right, this is what we come here for. So basically, they're saying that, evil entities may be trying to warn or scare paranormal investigators to get them to depart from the location they're investigating. I don't know why you would put evil in front of the word entities. Let's just say entities may be trying to warn or scare paranormal investigators. This could be a fact.
yeah.
They could be, because like I said, we know the entities we're dealing with are not, well, and let me say, when we say evil, see, they say evil like it's demonic or something. That's totally wrong to me. My opinion, my theory is an evil person is just an evil person that was alive. That could have been somebody that kicked a cat or did something stupid evil. You know what I mean? It's kind of like disturbing. Demonic is biblical, flat out. Demonic is biblical. Let's just keep that in our minds. Demonic is biblical. Evil does not mean biblical. It means evil. Like, you're just a butthead when you're alive and you're a butthead when you died. So This kind of disembodied voice, they say, is not to be messed with because they can become violent. The spirits can become violent. Again, they put the E word in front of it. I'm not saying it no more. The spirits can become violent. This is true. Any entity that you deal with, if they give you a disembodied voice. Now, the guy that said yes to chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a sweet tea.
I like how you said that like you just read it off a cue card. Everybody notice how quick that rolled off Dalton's tongue there? Come on down to Dalton's. Come on down to Dalton's Chicken Shack. We'll get you set up with the number one real quick.
Number one, with a side of mash.
With a side of mash and a free investigation with every purchase.
That's right. Hey, we could do that, man. That's an idea. Anyway, that dude did not get violent. There was no violence there. He just said, yes, I'd like to, I'd like to have that kind of meal, So I think a lot of that's false, what they're saying. That's just my opinion. However, they say it's possible a spirit can be kind and wants to communicate. Now, that's where you should lead off with when you're trying to write a statement about ghosts or spirits, because that's what we run into 92% of the time, or 90% of the time, is a spirit that's kind and wants to communicate and share a part of their story. I've always said the reason I like paranormal investigating is because these spirits want to be heard. They want to be heard, and they want to tell you their story, because that's the closest thing that they're going to get to living again, is that somebody's listening. And I enjoy listening to their stories, and especially when you deal with, I'm a big, like I said, big Civil War buff, especially when you go to Civil War places, or you go to just even like old places, like old Western places, and hear, they tell you stories, you ask questions, they answer, or stuff comes out about a gunfight that happened in the saloon, or, I mean, that stuff is like, you're, I don't know if you're doing somebody justice, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're kind of like Dr. Phil of the dead, I guess. You're listening, and you're solving a puzzle, and it's an investigation. And I love that about it. And that's the way people should always remember, is that a big part of the time, it's just a spirit that wants to communicate and share part of their story with you, because it probably, to my opinion, again, is probably the closest thing for them to be alive again. I mean, when you're gone, I mean, what are you talking to, other spirits or ghosts? But if you actually have, a real person come in and you can communicate, it's like they're itching to tell you something. I mean, you can contest that every investigation we've done, do you not feel like these spirits are itching to just tell us something?
Oh yeah.
So
I could easily see
So
that.
the last thing I want to do, because I know we've been on here a while, I know you're about ready to cut it. So the scientific theory. So scientific theory shine light on the possible explanation behind disembodied voices that are not related to the supernatural. These theories expose spirit voices as nothing more than a hallucination. Here we go with hallucination or misinterpretation of sound. I don't know how you misinterpret somebody saying yes in a room, or somebody yelling across the hall it was an accident, or when you had your ordeal. I don't know how you would mistake that as a misperception of sound. It's clear. I mean, our EVPs are pretty clear. The ghost box is pretty clear. When somebody just yells yes in a room, that's definitely clear. When you hear kids laughing in your own ear, that's clear. I'm not misperceiving anything. Are you?
No, not at all. It's that's, I'm not going to touch that.
Right.
We'll
So I'll
as
go
it
on
is.
with, right. So they say it's called auditory hallucinations. So now I'm going to agree with some of this right here on the research that I've done. This was probably, I don't know, a few months ago when we talked about we were going to do this episode. Mental health conditions, sleep disorders, medication side effects. We talked about some of the things that happen that medication side effects can cause, which is sleep paralysis or hallucinations of vision. Sleep disorders, okay. Sleep disorders sleep apnea and stuff like that. Okay. It can result in hearing voices that aren't really there. This can range from insomnia's effect to more serious conditions like schizophrenia. Okay, now, when you're getting into schizophrenia, you're getting into a really deep medical subject of schizophrenia. Now those people. Now here's where I knock scientific theory a little bit. Is that when you're dealing with schizophrenia, yes, it's medical, but because you don't look at the paranormal the way you do, how do you know that people with schizophrenia are not hearing real voices?
Right.
You're just saying that they're crazy, they belong in a fruit house, straitjacket, boom, schizophrenia, because you won't open your mind to the paranormal. Like I open my mind to everything, scientific, paranormal. What do we do when we go to investigation? If somebody's having issues, we go straight medical first. What are your medical conditions? What kind of medicine you taking?
Yep.
We don't jump into the paranormal, right?
No, we look at everything first. That, in all sincerity, the paranormal is going to be the last explanation. We look at everything first that makes sense. That
right.
Society says here's possibly and plausibly why this scenario is happening. Rather, it's psychological, it's emotional, it's physical, it's environmental. It could be family related. It could be work related. There's tons of things where I've initially went to sit with a family or an individual, and I give them a questionnaire, and I get deep and personal on a lot of questions. It's over 100 questions. And I ask these things because it's not to discredit them of what they're saying is wrong or invalid, but it's to parse and get down to the root of the problem before the time is spent and the energy to do a full-blown investigation with everything that entails. Sometimes I've been able to identify things that people are like, I never even thought of that. And then that's it. There is no investigation. Because just by that discovery conversation, we were able to explore things in a responsible, sensible manner, maturely. And then it's like, thank you so much. This gave us clarity. We didn't look at it like this, or we never thought of this. Or now that you explained X, Y, Z, we can see how this may be contributing to this scenario. And I can honestly say,
like we did the.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I can honestly say, regardless of how intrusive or personal the questions are that I ask, I've never had one person come back and say that was wrong to ask that, or I didn't want to get personal, because they know we're only there for the intentions of helping and trying to get a resolve or give clarity or closure. And that's part of being the aspect of being the professional investigator, is knowing when to say, okay, we're good, or pulling back, or saying, here's what we see. It's always with a very balanced and measured mentality in hand of trying to help.
Well, we did an investigation one time where the EMF readings were off the chain.
Oh yeah.
And we always do the readings for that purpose, because I want to know, hey, they got bad EMF readings off the chain, like their meters were leaking bad, the breaker panel was leaking bad. And a lot of stuff in this trailer, we was doing a trailer, it was a mobile home. And a lot of stuff where their living room was leaking really bad. And they were talking about some headaches, and they just didn't understand why. And I gave them some information about electric magnetic fields and what you need to get an electrician out here to put coverings over these wires, because they're leaking real bad. Now that can cause hallucinations, seeings, like you're seeing something, and that was the root cause of their problem. Was they had too much EMF, electric magnetic field, in that room, the living room where they sat and watched TV, and it was affecting them. So it had nothing to do with the paranormal. So that's just so everybody knows, the paranormal means the unexplained. So that could be aliens, Bigfoot, or spirits. If you can't explain it, if you get down to after you do medications and all your research, and you can't explain what's going on, that's why we go to the paranormal, because that's what that is. Now we're getting into the unexplained. What possibly could this be? So after auditory hallucinations, you have misperception of sound. We kind of went over that. I'm not misperceiving anything when I hear a disembodied voice clearly say something to me. Technological sources.
Technologically.
Yeah, well, this is technological
Okay.
sources. Tech can really act up sometimes. The radio can produce static, white noise, power line.
Yep.
Power lines can buzz audibly overhead, and your ghost hunting microphone can pick up its own output.
Oh, it
All
can.
these, they can. So all these common incidents can be misconstrued, and we take all the precautions necessary to keep that from happening. So the last thing I want to say is the common types of disembodied voices are basically, abandoned locations. You hear distant voices coming from another room. That would be May Stringer when the guy yelled across the hall. Abandoned locations would be St. Albans or where you were. Whispers floating in through an open window. Haven't got that one yet. You're dealing with forgotten woodland deities who stalk the forest. Now, when you get in, am I pronouncing that right? Deities?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so when you're dealing with a deity, you're dealing with I want to say it's a religious form of, it's something that, all right, so I might be wrong about this. Correct me if you know about deities, but it's like something they pray to. So, but a deity can also, I guess, be a spirit that wanders certain areas like forests or, outside. I guess it deals with outside stuff. Am I kind of hitting it on the head there?
So basically, it's just what it comes down to, a god or goddess that is considered to be of the notation of being divine. And with that, it could be something that people look to for inspiration or comfort or their own personal reasons. So that's what it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be religious related. So
Right. It could just be I can't think of the word, but anyway, I'm gonna move on. So whatever the cause may be, it could be a good idea to educate yourself on different types of disembodied voices. Well, there's no way to educate yourself on a disembodied voice because it comes from spirits, and I don't even know why somebody would say that. But anyway, it's common. The common type of disembodied voice that's been reported. Now, this is the same people that I kind of disagree with. There are many amazing and disturbing accounts of this type of voice. The talking can be either heard as a distant conversation. We've had those. We've heard like there be a conversation in another room while we're standing in one room. There sounds like there's people talking in the other room, and everybody that's with us is in that same room we're in. So we've caught that. We've caught the whispers. We've caught the clear words that come out clearly, and the spirit can even call out your name. Now, I've only had that happen once. Most of the time they say our name, it's on a device. It's either going to be on an Ovilus, spirit box, or whatever. Usually it's very rare. Like I said, I've only had it once where it said my name out loud. So these, oftentimes the voices aren't even heard during a paranormal investigation. We talked about that. Instead, it's heard when they play recording devices back, which is our EVPs, right? We talked about that. So we've heard singing before. Is another type. I think you've heard some humming or singing at one time in one of your investigations. I've definitely heard a female singing in another room.
Oh, I've heard
and gone on there, and
I've heard all sorts of stuff, man. Everything from
so
laughing to talking to conversations to people directly saying things to me, rather it's one word, a phrase, my name, even saying things to me that I don't even say audibly out loud, like they're picking my brain and just saying things only I know. It's uncanny and kind of at times disarming, depending on what gets stated. But so
there's also the questions: can disembodied voices cause harm? Before I even read this statement on my research, I'm going to say no. I've never been harmed by a disembodied voice. I've never seen anything violent from disembodied voices. Now, did some of the disembodied voices sound angry, like the one that yelled at us across the hall in May Stringer? Yes. Was anything violent that happened, or was I hurt, or was any harm done to me or any of the investigators there? No. He expressed his anger that I was pushing the kids about to fall off the second floor balcony. and he expressed his anger by yelling at me, but nobody was harmed. So all my time of doing investigations, I've never been harmed by a disembodied voice. So anyway, disembodied voices are cool. I love them. It's what we go investigate for, is for movement, voices, and real hardcore like paranormal evidence. There's a lot of times we catch voices on our EVPs, or we might have caught a disembodied voice, didn't quite understand it, but caught it on the EVP, and we can kind of clearly hear what they're saying on the EVP. So we'll use that. But there's a lot of stuff that I have thrown out because it just wasn't clear, and it just wasn't clear. And I'm not going to put that kind of thing out if you can't hardly understand or decipher exactly what's going on. But to me, I mean, disembodied voices, it's an amazing experience if you ever get to experience that. I will tell you that. The first time I experienced it was at St. Albans, and that was very cool. I had the biggest smile on my face. I almost wanted to go get that guy chicken, fried steak, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a sweet tea.
Yep. There you go. There you go. Well, as it goes for this podcast on aspirations, as some people say, but apparitions and dangers of the paranormal world, and lastly, disembodied voices. This is everything me and Dalton have to say on this subject matter for now. You might find parallels in previous podcasts that we spoke on concerning these three subjects, and we may be talking about these again in the future.
Definitely apparitions.
There you go. Definitely apparitions. So, with everything we've said, we appreciate you listening. If you're a new listener, if you are a returning listener, welcome back. If you've listened to us before, took a break and came back, thank you for coming back also. We definitely appreciate everybody that tunes in and follows us on all the different podcast platforms we're on. I believe it's 13 now. As far as it goes, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, feel free to email us at info@theoryparanormal.com, and me and Dalton will be able to receive any photos, pictures, videos, audio. I know I said photos twice, but just to emphasize that. And we'll be able to go ahead and review that and get that back to you and let you have our official opinion. If you have anything you want us to review, we've been doing that for people all over the world, actually. And whatever gets reviewed by us stays between us and you. And
or you could actually go to the Theory Paranormal Facebook page, and you can send the message through there if you like to. If it's easier for you, if you're on Facebook and you're wandering Facebook and you say, oh, let me go to the Theory Paranormal Facebook page and send these guys a question or send them some evidence, you can send it through the Facebook page as well.
And the apparition that we spoke of tonight on the house is actually featured on there right now. So if you go, you'll see the photo that we were discussing. So,
yep, all three photos, the first, second, and third. First one shows nothing. Second shows the apparition staring out into the lawn, and then the third one actually shows where they're making the turn to walk off. So I put all three of those up.
So as far as that goes, that is all we have for this podcast. We appreciate you listening in. And as we say here at Theory Paranormal, don't be afraid to ask questions.